Indian classical music is traditional, rich, beautiful, intense, and yet relaxing and meditative. You and I are living a typical 21st century life with gadgets and information overload. How are we going to connect these two worlds? Or is it even possible? Or does it even make sense? Let us face some hard questions together. Can you imagine starting your Indian classical music journey without joining a vocal or instrument class? Do you think you can start Indian classical music exploration without musical talents? Do you think it is easy to get started with Indian classical music along with daily responsibilities of your busy lives? Can you imagine working professionals benefiting from Indian classical music? Do you think it is easy to groom Indian classical music lovers within your family in today's times? Is it easy to find safe spaces around you to emote, express, and simply bond over Indian classical music? Are you able to sit through or appreciate long Indian classical music concerts without getting bored? Do you even see the need to? Are your children supported enough on a regular basis to enjoy Indian classical music? Can you imagine a common man equipped enough to study or research on Indian classical music without being a music student? Can you imagine a wholesome Indian classical music exploration experience in the digital space? Can you imagine learning Indian classical music for any other reason outside of stage performances? Have you imagined the power of Indian classical music to heal our communities in today's uncertain times? Have you experienced the emotional and intellectual appeal of Indian classical music to connect with yourselves and others? Have you thought of long-term benefits of Indian classical music to de-stress and tackle anxiety? There are so many more questions we have in our minds. The not so surprising answers to all the questions is no. We tell you it is possible with love, with consistency, with technology. It is possible at ShrotaHouse. We are here to connect beautiful worlds and let the magic of Indian classical music blossom in every home. Subscribe to Concert Express, a classical journey where you regularly listen to Indian classical music and just open up and express while seamlessly learning about the art forms. Concert Express by ShrotaHouse is a program which is regular, relaxing, rejuvenating, for we believe that listening is the beginning of learning. ShrotaHouse takes each of you to the beautiful world of Indian classical music. And we hope to see you at Concert Express, a classical journey. Thank you.
Namaskar. This is Dharitree Joshi welcoming all of you, the panelists and the audience, for the third panel discussion hosted by ShrotaHouse. And it is titled Indian Classical Music, India versus abroad. There cannot be a more opportune time to have this discussion as we Indians are celebrating the 75th anniversary of our independence on the 15th of August. And there is this Amrit in the form of Indian classical music that India has offered to the world since ages, since many, many centuries. And it has, in a way, shaped the world, shaped the generations. And as we are celebrating the Amrit Mahotsav of our independence, there cannot be a more opportune and auspicious time to do an overhaul of how Indian classical music has been shaping up and will impact the future. And I am very honored and I feel really privileged to host a distinguished panel today, which involves Hindustani musicians, also Carnatic musicians from India and not from India. So I first of all wish everybody a very happy 75th Indian Independence Day to all Indians in India, outside of India, and all the friends of India. And we move on to our discussion today. Before we start, I would like to make a brief introduction of all the illustrious panelists. To begin with, Vidushi Sahana Banerjee. She is a renowned sitar player of the Rampur Senia Gharana. She is a performer and an educator. She is recipient of Ustad Bismillah Khan Yuva Award. She organizes Swara Sudha, which is a series of house concerts, and the view behind that being to expand the Hindustani audience to take this music to people who are not yet into it and impact their lives in a way. Sahana ji has been performing in India and abroad equally and is considered as one of the very sought after stalwart of Hindustani sitar. I welcome Sahana ji. Thank you for joining this discussion today. We have the second panelist, Shri Kamalakiran Vinjamuri, a young Carnatic violinist from USA. He was trained under the tutelage of Sangeeta Kalanidhi A. Kanyakumari ji. He has been a recipient of many prestigious awards, including the Lalagudi Award. He has won many prestigious competitions and awards. He has performed at prestigious music festivals and at major venues, including the Kennedy Center in USA. I welcome Kamal. Thank you so much for joining us today. The third panelist being Vidwan Nishanth Chandra. He is also a Carnatic classical violinist. He is a top-ranking All India radio artist. He has performed at many prestigious venues such as the Madras Music Academy in Chennai. He also performed as a part of Pandit Ravi Shankarji's ensemble. He is a principal researcher at Microsoft Research India and has received a PhD in computer science from UCLA. Welcome, Nishanth. Thanks for joining us today. I will be moderating this session and will be contributing my insights also, and will be mostly flagging my questions to the illustrious panel. I would like to mention about my gurus. I have been trained in the Agra Jaipur vocal style of the Hindustani Khayal style by Vidushi Kavita Kharvandikar. And I also got an opportunity to learn directly from her guru, Pandit Babanrao Hardankar. And I recently moved to Switzerland, and now I'm trying to spread in the Hindustani classical music here in Switzerland and try to acquaint the new generation in Switzerland with this music. With this brief introduction of the panelists, we will be getting to know them more, right, with the first question. So I'd like to throw in the first question straight away to our panelists. You are all very good musicians and artists who I have performed at various venues in many prestigious conferences and festivals, and have been extensively performing worldwide. We would like to know about your talim, how you were groomed as a young musician, about your gurus, your relationship with your gurus, and most importantly, where did you learn? Which city, which part of the world did you learn? Where was your guru and how that learning happened? Was it virtual? Was it in person? And would also like to know, would you have liked it any other way than the way it happened to you? So I would like Sahana ji to begin and throw her insights.
Sure. I think that you can all hear my voice properly. Yeah. So I am born and brought up in Calcutta and born in a family where totally it was music oriented. My father was a legendary sitar and surbahar maestro of Rampur Sania Gharana. His name was Pandit Santosh Banerjee. And my mother was vocalist of Rampur Sahaswan Gharana. So from my childhood, I got this atmosphere, and it was very much spontaneous for me to start my music. And I actually started with vocal music from my very childhood when I was very young. And gradually, when I was five years old, I got a sitar as my birthday gift. Someone gifted us. So I started my journey with sitar. So in this way, I started. In my family, there was I never thought that I will be something different than a sitar player. It says I have to be a sitar player because I used to see that great pupils, they are all great musicians. They're coming to my dad to learn their music, and he was also head of the department of Ravindra Bharati University of music department. So I have seen a lot of things at my home. So many great musicians, they are coming to my father. They used to be good friend of my dad. My mother is teaching, so my father's students all inspired me to become a good musician. That was the atmosphere. So it was totally Rampur Senia Gharana. My father's teacher, his guru was Ustad David Khan Sahab of Rampur Senia. He was the last family lineage of Mia Tansen ji's daughter's side actually. So David Khan Sahab, Ustad David Khan Sahab used to come to our place for 26 years at our ancestral home. And this home is 200 years old. Still it is there in Kolkata, in South Kolkata. I regularly visit. And Ustad ji used to come to my dad to give him talim. So this was the background. And my mom, she was very much regular in her riyaz. She used to teach a lot of students. So I have seen this scenario from my childhood. So to become a sitar player is nothing, it's very spontaneous, very automatic for me. That's why I am into it.
Thank you, Sahana ji. Do you think that would you have liked it any other way, the talim that you received or the grooming?
Yes, very much. Because as I am born in such a family, from my childhood, I have experienced all great music. I have got opportunity to listen great music, to experience great musicians. Means my parents and their friends. So they used to be like Pandit Buddhadev Dasgupta ji, Pandit Manilal Nag ji. They all used to be my father's friends. So I have experienced a lot of things I'm so fortunate in this way, I can say. So my taste was only Indian classical music from my childhood. And I used to think that, I used to feel little difference when I used to go to school, in my missionary school, where no classical music atmosphere was accepted. It was only Christmas carols and all, then westerns. But that was a little conflict that when I used to come back, this is a time of riyaz, time for riyaz, for my studies and riyaz and studies alternatively. So I never disclose to my school that I'm practicing sitar. When I got the trophy when I was in 9th, I think, I got Nikhil Banerjee Challenge Trophy, Ustad, that is Best Instrumentalist Award for Double and Music Conference. They organize a competition. Then my school came to know about me. And my mind was always full of, that music and the melodious songs, old melodies, raga-oriented songs like this. My taste was like this only. So that's why it is the impact that my family background, that is the tremendous impact on me. So in this way, I groomed myself, and it was very spontaneous. That I did nothing for myself. All came to me very spontaneously, automatically.
I don't think anyone can have it better. The grooming days, the formative days. I would like to hear from Nishanth Chandra now about his formative years.
Thank you very much, Dharitree ji. Firstly, wish all viewers a very happy Independence Day. Very happy to be part of this panel, and thanks for the invitation to be part of this panel. My guru actually is Kamalakiran, and I share the same guru. Both of us have had the great fortune of learning from Sangeeta Kalanidhi, Kanyakumari ji. I have been one of her oldest disciples. I grew up in Madras, which is perhaps the center of all Carnatic music. Most concerts, perhaps in the world, in Carnatic music take place in Madras. My family itself is very much into music. One of the greatest composers in Carnatic music, Saint Tyagaraja, had 3 disciples. Of whom the closest was a person by name Tillasthanam Ramayangar, and our family is a descendant of him, and therefore there was always music in the house. Just like Sahana ji said, that atmosphere just creates a very vibrant environment to pick up music. So I started learning first with vocal music. When I was 4, I started with vocal music. But at around the age of 7, my grandmother, whom I never met, used to play the violin, and there was a violin at home, and I was really fascinated by that violin at that particular age. And my father was a big fan of Kanyakumari ji, and so we went and met her, and yeah, she readily agreed to teach me, and that was a fabulous experience for me at that young age to get an opportunity to learn from her. And mind you, it was at a time when she was also exceedingly busy. She was touring and she had concerts every day, but her dedication, she would come back from her concert, and then at 9:30 she would call me up, and I was 7 years or so. I would have taken a short nap, and then I would go at 10 o'clock to her house and then sit for 2 hours for class. Right. So I would say, even though I was not staying with her, it was very much very similar to a Gurukulam, right? Because I was at her place practically every day. I was there. Right? So and learning so much from her at night, and then go back. I was also very fortunate to be in a school that had very limited hours. About 8 to 1 o'clock or so only was my school hours. So I had a lot of time to come back home, practice a lot. And there were 2 other disciples of my guru. So I used to play with them, practice with them a lot, and learn from them also. And so it was a great environment growing up in Madras. There were so many concerts to go to. I mean, you really had to say enough. There's so much music, you could not consume that much music. And then I also at one point of time, once I started performing violin concerts. This was when I was about 9 or 10. I found that there was a lesser time for vocal music. It was harder to do that and vocal music and violin. So vocal music took a little bit of a backseat. But fortunately, when I was about 13, I had the good fortune of coming in close contact with Padma Bhushan awardee P.S. Narayan Swami sir. And he is a legendary singer of Carnatic music, legendary teacher. So many, almost Everybody who grew up in Madras would say, oh, I learned to PSN Mama. I went to PSN Mama and learned from him. So, and it was a great blessing that I could spend so many years learning from him as well. And I found that vocal music, Indian music itself is very, very vocal music driven. And so I found that learning vocal music from him had a very, very positive impact on my violin play as well. And he was also very much encouraging of this. And he was, because he knew I was not going to perform vocal music, but this was supporting my violin career. And so I had the great fortune of learning from him for several years. And that has been my training. I've now been performing for about 31 years or so, Carnatic music, in both in India and all over the world.
It is so inspiring to learn about your journeys as students and about your illustrious gurus. As a only vocalist in the panel, I am very glad that you brought up this topic of Indian music being vocal driven. And I have seen many instrumentalists who and their gurus, they make the instrumentalist learn vocal style, vocal composition.
Absolutely. Our guru, and Kamalakiran also will tell you, right? Our guru, when she used to teach us, she used to sing and we had to play it. That's all. Yeah. She would never play it and then say, play it again, right? So immediately you're learning so many things while doing that. First of all, a violin, just playing the instrument, the Swarajnanam, what we say, right? You listen to something, what are the notes, what are all the, especially in Indian music, it's not, when I play 4 notes, it's not just 4 notes. Some 10 other notes will come together. When you sing it also, actually, you'll not know those notes are there in that. When you play it, then you will realize, okay, this note is coming when you're playing that, right? And to pick that up and play it, that is a skill set I think that you, as an instrumental, definitely have to pick up. And so because she used to sing and we had to repeat it, immediately that skill set immediately came. The other thing is, the violin is a very, very important accompanying art, instrument as well in Carnatic music. And so the fact that she was singing and immediately we would play afterwards, or she would sing some Kalpana Swara and immediately we have to repeat it, that automatically gave us the training. It's not like she had to specifically give us training for that as well. So I think it was great learning experience with her.
Thank you, Nishanth, for sharing your journey. I would like to now hear from Kamal. Please do share your journey. And being in US, how have you managed to learn this art form? That would be interesting to know.
First of all, namaste to everybody. Thank you for having me as part of this panel. And happy Independence Day to everyone. Actually, very similar to what Sahana ji said in the beginning, I grew up in a musical family. My father is a violinist. So even though I was born in the US, I don't think my journey was, in my case, very different in the beginning, because at home, my father would always play. He would always be teaching students. My aunt is a dancer, so there was always music in the family. And so violin was, I had already learned violin from the age of like 3 or 4, when there's like this toy violin that they'd make me play just sa and pa. So I always had that training. Additionally, I also learned mridangam around the same time. I started learning mridangam because I think I was also very interested in both instruments. And then in 2006, I was about 9 years old. I moved to Chennai for about a year, where that's when I started learning from Kanyakumari ma'am. And then also I was learning mridangam, but both gurus were saying you have to choose, because mridangam is a different skill set, and also you have to have time to practice one seriously. So one of them had to take a backseat. In my case, mridangam took a backseat, and violin was what I focused on. And I actually went to school in India for 1 year. And as Nishanth said, I had almost classes every day with Kanyama. And it was interesting because because of the timings, I'm not sure what it was, but I would always, I had many solo classes as well as group classes. So I had the fortune of even being in classes with, senior violinists like Nishanth and Ramana, who've been there for so long from Kanyama, and also I had my peers and also my juniors. So one good thing about I think classes, as Nishantana would always say, is that we're all able to get in a group together and learn from each other. So that was one huge thing. Then again, as he said, there was not much we had to do in order to get classes from her. She'd always just call. I remember one time particularly, and I was 9, so I was a very young kid. At 5 a.m. or 5:30 a.m., we got a call saying she had just come from Bangalore, and then she has to go on a flight to Dubai or something at like 9, so I have to come at 6 a.m. for class. So like this, I've gone as early as 5, 6 a.m. and I've stayed as late as, past midnight at her place. So I was fortunate enough to have that in-person experience, and almost, as Anna said, like a Gurukula Vakam, because I was there almost every day. And then also, even though I was in the US every year, I'd go twice a year during the December season and also the December Margari season, where concerts happen all over Chennai, and also in the summer. For us, that was June, July, and August. And then when I would come back to the US, there was another guru waiting for me at home, my father. So I always had training from my guru Kanyama and my father, and so I was very fortunate in that way. And even to this day, if I don't call my guru for maybe a week or two, I'll get a call from her. That's, I think, the biggest blessing. I don't know what we as students have done. Like I've never seen that in a guru, and even if it's not class, I might have not had a sit down class with her in a while, but every week or two, if I don't call, I will definitely get a call. And and I had also had classes over the phone. We never did any Zoom or Skype, but over the phone I would have classes. So we'd put it on speakerphone, and then I'd have another phone recording the class. So I'd have like 2 phones in front of me, and that's how we would have classes virtually, I guess, if you could say. One other tidbit I want to add is, as Nishantana said, I actually, when I first went, I was so young, I didn't know much about, who I was learning from. I just thought, okay, my father said, go to learn from Kanyama. I went and learned from her. She hadn't played the violin in the class. She was just singing. So for the first 3-4 months, I had no idea how my guru played the violin. I just knew she was singing, but I've never heard her play the violin. So one day I told my papa, does she play the violin? I've never seen her play the violin. Please take me. Then I went to a concert of hers and I was absolutely mind blown. So just to showcase the importance that she put on vocal style, like I think I maybe in the 16 years I've learned from her, I might have had 2 or 3 classes where she actually played the violin in class. Other than that, it's always been through vocal. So I would say maybe I'm not the best panelist for living in the US because I was often in India just as much as I was in the US. But I was also fortunate to have my father here.
Yeah, fair enough, because going back and then sticking to your passion and then continuing it in an atmosphere which is not very congenial for pursuing it is I mean it's very creditable and must congratulate you, and I'm sure you are inspiration to the younger Indian kids who are growing up now globally, not in India but elsewhere, and want to pursue this art ardently. It was really wonderful to know your journeys. I probably was not, I'm the only one probably who doesn't come from a musician family as such. And I used to go to my teacher's place and learn while the senior students are learning, just accompany them on the tanpura. Most of my learning I did in the initial years was by listening to them. And then I started to get into my own riyaz and my own talim from my guru. And this is how it happened. I always had to travel, even within India. And now when I'm not in India, of course, when I want to see my guru, I have to travel. But now there is a luxury of having lessons online and so on. So that advantage is there. One beautiful thing that happened to me when I came to Switzerland, and I wouldn't have had it any other way, was that I was introduced to, I always wanted to learn tabla as a vocalist, but I was introduced to actual tabla learning when I came to Switzerland. And that was from the Ali Akbar College of Music in Basel. which has a percussion wing, which is who the director of that wing is none other than Pandit Swapan Chaudhary ji. So we get to learn from his senior disciples and occasionally from him. So that is one beautiful thing that happened to me when I came to Switzerland, and I don't think I can have it any other way. When I came here, I obviously started teaching because I felt that there is a need to cultivate an audience, to cultivate the appreciation for this music here. On a larger scale, there are obviously people who are doing it, but to take it to a larger audience, something needs to start, some more efforts from my side need to be done. And I started that. And as a teacher who teaches kids and adults, Indians, non-Indians living in Switzerland, I have faced many challenges. One challenge was the language, because I live in the German part of Switzerland, and to integrate and to be able to communicate, I had to learn the language. And whereas I clearly see there are some advantages, whereas some kind of cliches teaching the Indians, the students who are in India. So I would like to hear in your inputs on or your experiences. What do you think is the best part of teaching an Indian in India and somebody who is not in India, maybe not an Indian? So maybe Nishanth can start with his.
Sure. So I've lived in the US for about 10 years or so while I did my PhD at UCLA, and I taught quite a few people over there. And then now I don't teach as regularly. I have one student. Other than that, I don't have the time to take on too many students. But I have one serious student. But during my time at UCLA, I taught quite a few people in India. In LA itself. I think the biggest difference I felt between teaching, and that could just be personal, how things panned out, was that in India, classes are a bit more fluid. Someone can, especially if they're in the same city as you, they can come over, can go on for 2, 3, 4 hours. It need not be a hard boundary. For example, even though the student I have currently in India, she's not based in my city, she's based in Vijayawada. But she came over and she was here visiting me for about a few weeks, and classes would just go on. She could just keep playing, and then I would also play, and there's the entire the atmosphere is there. It keeps going. There's no hard boundaries. In the US, I found that of course there are a lot of people who are interested in learning, which is a very nice thing to see. I found that I was also in a city with a large Indian population with a lot of interest in Carnatic music, and people used to come. Distances are also large, right? So people used to come from 1 hour, 1.5 hours, 2 hours away, one-way driving just to have a class. But then life was also different. They have other things going on. So you had like a 45-minute class or a one hour class, and then they would go back, unfortunately, right? So that time restriction was there, which was maybe a little bit restrictive, especially when you want to learn something like this. It is okay maybe earlier on when you're just starting out. I think it's fine because you anyway may not have may not be able to imbibe more than that at a given point of time. But later on, that could be problematic. And for longer sessions, I think physical ends up being a better. Even now with my student also, I teach her on Skype, but if I really want a lot of these hardcore sessions, then it's better if we have a class in person, because that can go on for 5-6 hours. It's just easier to do that rather than doing it over Skype. And I mean, there's also time lags a little bit this way, that way. And so it is a lot easier to do it in person. But other than that, I didn't find a big difference between, I primarily taught only Indians in the US as well. There was one non-Indian I taught. The non-Indian had background in Western classical music, and so I did try to maybe translate some of our music into a language that he would be a little bit more familiar with. But yeah, by and large, I found that it was Indians who were learning our art form.
Thank you, Nishanth. I would like Sahana ji to share her experience teaching.
Yes. From 2001 to 2009, I was settled in Europe after my marriage. So I started teaching there, and I used to do a lot of concerts there at different venues. And I found some students, but the scenario has been changed within these 20 years. You will find that because nowadays these online sessions, due to COVID maybe, but before COVID also you used to take some online sessions, but that was not so much. But during COVID, it is totally, it has become online based. So I have many students who are from abroad, and one thing I must mention that Indians, young people who are coming to me, that few of them are very much dedicated in terms of their riyaz, in terms of their thinking, thought process, and all that dedication. But some of them, and few others, their destination is social media. But for abroad students, I find it is not like that. They are coming all the way from abroad. It is very expensive. They're coming from there. They're hiring something here, maybe a paying guest, PG or hotels, whatever they're getting. They're staying for 1 month, 2 months, and they're teaching, they're taking talim in person. And when they are going back, they are doing it, continuing via online. So, but they are not in hurry that I have to be so famous within 1 month. One gath and one bandish, and it is even not clear in fingers that some of them I find that they are very much in hurry to get likes, applause. But this is not the way to learn Indian classical music. Indian classical music is matter of sadhana, dedication, and one has to be perfect. Every day we make ourselves perfection. I have to have. So this patience is lacking nowadays. But in abroad, I find who are coming to me, they are more dedicated than my Indian students. Means I'm talking about the young fellows who are maybe 19 years old, 20 years old, like that, and maybe 22 years old, that within 2-3 months they try to put something on social media, and because they think that they are getting likes, that means they are doing very well. Actually, they are doing nothing actually. So it is our saddest part for a teacher when you know that as you are a musician, you can understand that in our music there are a few layers in it, that we have shastras, we have to learn shastra, Shastriya Sangeet, shastra is must. Then we have some philosophy and also realization. Through music we gather, we acquire it at the end of the day. So the emotion that it creates some philosophy, it gives some meditative base, spirituality. So these things are matter of long time practice and long years sadhana. But nowadays, the present generation, they are not willing to take all these inputs. They only want gath and just bandish, done, recorded, it is released. So this is sometimes very much frustrating for a teacher. But I must mention that I have many students who are also, but currently last 12 years I stay in Pune. So I find some of my students who are coming all the way from Nasik, Solapur and all, they're Bombay. They're coming for one class, at least maybe after alternatively 2 weeks, alternatively. They are so dedicated. So when I am there at home, they always consult with me. They fix that, ma'am, I am coming for class. But normally I find that the more younger generation, they're in hurry. And actually, that is our responsibility. Music, we have to keep our music and the genuine format of our music alive. That's keeping alive is our responsibility, because the authenticity of music, the pure music form, that is very much important. It is not only hampering this day, it is also harmful for the next generation, because we are also growing older. The next generation, what they will, if they are happy with such small things, then after 25 years, 30 years, what is going to happen? Right? So this I experience, everything is there. So we always try to give the light to the students, but nowadays students, they are not ready to go into the deep. They are in floating stage. But in abroad, I find such dedicated students, they come for only learning. They come all the way from US, from Europe, for only learning sitar. They come, they are so much devoted. If I say, you come every day for 3 hours at my place, they have no problem. They will come, they will sit. So this is the difference between now at present scenario in India and abroad.
I think the data in India is pretty less expensive. Probably that has to change, and then people will be less tempted to go on the social media. But what you pointed, Sahana ji, is really true, that we have to, as students and as performers, we have to keep the spirit of Indian music alive, which is the true meditative nature of it.
Yes.
And trying to communicate with oneself, trying to be in unison with your own self first, rather than the showcasing.
Showcasing must be there in future, but our music is basically meditative. It's a spiritual base. It is born from Veda. It is born from nature. Yes. So we cannot escape it for our benefit. We are making it entertainment. We are making it something else to earn money. That is not accepted, because it is now we are talking about like this. That what will happen after 50 years? That's change its actual Svarsthan. It can be changed.
Yes.
Everything can be. Sitar will be played like other instruments, maybe other Western instruments. So what message are we giving to the audience, to the young generation? Young generation is attracted towards fast food. They are attracted towards fast music. They are not ready to accept that it is spiritual based, it is meditative music. So we are doing something. When we sit for puja, can we change the process of our puja?
Right.
Can we think that, oh, it is, time is up, so I have to do some modern technique of puja, so it will be easier for us to save our time. We don't do. Then why in case of our music? It is also our puja. It is a spiritual base.
Yes, you're right. And I would like to bring Kamal in here. I also, as a teacher, fear this oversimplification sometimes, that to try to get to more people and try to make it easy for them to digest. Are we oversimplifying it as teachers? And what is your experience teaching? I would also like to kick in the next question for you, Kamal, which is about collaborations. Being abroad, have you collaborated with other genres, other musicians of other genres? And do you think that collaboration would benefit attracting the audience to the purer form of Indian classical music? Please, come on.
Sure. Just a couple thoughts on the previous question, and then I'll speak as a student and then as a teacher, because I do teach as well. But as a student, I had the fortune of, as I said, being in India as well. So I learned as a student in India and as a student abroad. I've had both of those experiences. And I think personally, the one only difference that I see with people that my father teaches or that I teach as well, is, and this is I consider it actually a bad habit on my end. I think I should change the way I think. But what I did is, even in December when I would come to India, I would take off 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks from school. I would write a letter, say I can't make it. If I had any exams, I would take the exams before, or I'd take it after. I'd bring all my homework to India. I've done things where I've, flew on weekends where I have exams. I'd fly to maybe a different part of the US, play concerts, Saturday, Sunday. Monday morning, I would land in the airport and drive straight to my exam. Like, I've done all of these things as a student, or even when I was in India. I remember applying for colleges, I applied from India. I went to India and then I was learning from my guru. So I think the thing that I notice is sometimes I get a little frustrated if students are not as dedicated as I was, and as doing the same things. Like, I'm going to season this time, and I ask some students, are they coming? And they'll be like, no, I'll come after exams on the 25th or 26th to learn that. Or if, because of an exam, if they miss a class with my father, I sometimes I'm just like, because I did not do that, I kind of expect them to be a certain way. But I think I quickly realized that I think as much as they might not be as dedicated as I was, I mean, I think they still are. They might not be doing it in the same way that I'm doing, but despite all of that, they'll still make time for makeup lessons. They'll still come, even if it's 2-3 days. As Sahana ji said, it's not like cheap to come to India. They'll come all the way. They'll listen to concerts. They'll come visit my guru and play in front of her. And then and then everything, I think at the end of the day, people here that I've had, and Nishanth Anna was saying, we don't have most of the time classes are time bound. One thing I think my father and I do differently is that they are very much similar to the way I've learned from my guru. So most of the time, once you're in a more advanced stage, we try to make sure it's that way, because sometimes, when they come, we make it, please come with some time so that we can sit. You can't learn, or you can't explore a ragam in like an hour and expect to be completely good with it. And somewhat in the area that I'm from, all students seem to be very dedicated, very interested. And maybe what's different from 20 years ago to now is that even when I was growing up, we didn't have as many concerts in this area. Now we have concerts almost every week. We have good musicians in the area. So we have a conducive environment that's actually making students more and more interested. And because there are maybe 10 or 15 students, they have a peer group, so they can get together with their peer group and they can practice. And now, I mean, it's the happiest thing when me and my father get a recording from students saying, have you heard this recording? Look at the Sangati they played. Or that interest, seeing that is really, really good. And that's what makes me extremely happy about students in this area. And I think I also benefited by being a student in this area, and I had a peer group and I did the same thing. Talking about collaborations, when I was in my college, I minored in ethnomusicology. So ethnomusicology is basically the study of world music and its culture. So because of that, I was able to get in touch with musicians, Chinese musicians, Chinese traditional and pop music, Middle Eastern traditional music. They actually have a system like the Makam system, which is very similar to a raga system. And so I wouldn't have known any of this if I didn't take this course, but because of this course, I was able to meet musicians from different genres, and I was able to collaborate with them. Actually, even recently, I did somewhat of a collaborative piece in LA, where we worked with a piano player, and there were so many instances where I've done that. And the one thing is, I personally like to do collaborations as long as I don't have to change much of what I'm doing. I like to make sure that the Carnatic music is pretty pure in terms of I'm not adding notes that are not in the ragam or things like that. In terms of audiences, one thing interesting about foreign audiences is that whether there is a collaboration or not, they seem to be very interested in world music nowadays. I've played for audiences where everyone is non-music oriented, and I can play a heavy Todi raga and they'll just close their eyes and hear. Even if they don't really understand the nuances of it, they seem to be, I think the music can really speak for itself. I'm very confident that our music can speak for itself. And yes, I think collaborations are very good in attracting audiences, but more than that, I think collaborations help musicians. Because whatever mind, if I had a closed mind by collaborating with these artists, I'm able to open up and understand how they perform, how they see music, and how I'm able to connect with them. And I think we can learn from each other. So I think that's more the benefits of collaborating, even more than the audience. I think audience is great and all, but I think for musicians, we can grow a lot from collaborating with other musicians because we're able to learn a lot. But in terms of attracting audiences, as long as we get opportunities, I really think that the music can really speak for itself. That's just what I have to say.
Thank you. Thanks for your inputs, Kamal. I would like to hear from Nishanth also about collaborations with other genres and how it can benefit Indian classical music. Also, if you can briefly comment on how we can maintain the purity of the form and how we can take it to a larger audience in its pure form. Your inputs on both.
Yeah. Kamalakiran already said so many things wonderfully. I think all that he said was true, right? That I don't think the audience requires us to change the form and present it. I think there is still a wonderful space for pure Indian music, Carnatic, Hindustani, both together as well. Yeah, similarly, in my experience also, I found that not just the Indian audience, even the Western non-Indian audience is very appreciative. They very much, I think it just crosses all boundaries. So I think people are very much able to appreciate it. And as Kamalakiran said, I think we can, as musicians, can learn a lot when we collaborate or speak to jazz musicians or somebody like that. We can learn about different rhythm cycles that we may not have encountered. And then we can start thinking, oh, maybe if we brought in something that we have in Carnatic music into that, how will that sound? And we are not new to this. I mean, so the great masters of Carnatic music have done this in the past too, and they have thought about all these things and collaborated and said, oh, this wonderful thing, we can take it and bring it over here as well. And so that only enriches our music as well. In terms of collaboration, I certainly would say that, and that's one thing I miss maybe a little bit over here in India. I perhaps had a little bit more opportunity to collaborate, not just with non-Indian styles of music. I would say even Hindustani music. I was very happy in being in LA. LA had a wonderful music school as well. They had the illustrious musicians over there. Shujat Khanji was there for a long time. I had the great opportunity to talk to him as well, and Abhiman Kaushalji was there, like, performed with him, and so there were a lot of opportunities where there was a mixing of Hindustani and Carnatic music, and perhaps the greatest example of that was I got the opportunity to spend 2 weeks in Pandit Ravishankarji's house in San Diego. And who better to hear from and learn from about world music than him? He's not. I mean, you can say his background is in Indian music, but he is really a world musician. Right? Just the breadth that he had about everything, right? And so just sitting over there, you could just learn that. You could see that he was so open. That was the biggest thing that I think one could take away from him. He never had his mind closed, like, oh, this is Hindustani music, or in Hindustani music, this is how it should come, or anything like that. His mind was always good. Of course, whatever he played, he'll present it maybe with the Hindustani touch, right? Hindustani music touch. But his mind was open to absorb everything and then present everything. So I think that was just fabulous learning from him, just observing what his thought process was. And just it could, even if you take a very simple ragam, you take Kamas or something like that, and just see how his thought process was for some ragam like that. Just the arrangement of notes that you might be used to hearing things in only one particular way because your listening so far only Carnatic style and so on. Then you start listening Hindustani style and you say, okay, this also sounds so beautiful, right? And that opens your creativity also. Because if you have been listening only to one form of music, those are the only kinds of ideas that you might get. And even within Carnatic music, it's best if you listen to so many different people. That's what they say, right? Because then you'll get more ideas. We want to be more creative. And I think doing that with world music is the same thing. The more you can listen. And with Pandit Ravi Shankarji also, just hearing him think about the rag like Kamach or something, what are the different phrases he could come up in that, you start thinking, oh, you can do all this in Kamach as well. And then you start thinking, maybe we can also present it. We can maybe present it with the Carnatic lens. That's fine, right? It's not like we are saying we should take it and present it in some other form. Right? That's not what we're trying to do. But just being able to keep our eyes open for that. So I think, as Kamalakiran said very beautifully, it's greatest for the musicians because we learn so much about what is possible, right? And we can take that and try to incorporate it in our music as well.
Thanks, Nishanth. I also must add that I was exposed to Carnatic music more when I came to Switzerland. I found beautiful musicians, colleagues here who are pursuing Carnatic music, and I learned so much about that genre. And I definitely feel that in India, I really missed that. I grew up in a Hindustani atmosphere. Probably that give and take also within India can be, I feel, now it can enrich both the styles. I would like to bring in Sahana ji and would like to hear her views on collaborations briefly, how it can help Indian classical music, and also her views on collaborating with the other sister of Hindustani, the Carnatic style.
I frequently collaborate with Western classical music, and because a very much renowned project I worked with, there was a pianist from France. Her name is Shani Diluca, and this program was curated by National Radio Venice and National Radio France, Paris actually, and the topic was Francis Schubert meets Indian classical music. So she played some pieces of Schubert where I played 4 ragas, and just there is no similarity at all, but the only similarity is the sentiment and the emotion. And it clicked so well. So at first we did it for National Radio France, and then we became invited. We were invited for Venice Radio. And then again we started one project with that Beethoven and Indian classical music. Then it was not completed. Unfortunately, it stopped. But I have done, and also I have done musical collaboration with Massimo Macelli. He's a flautist. He stays in Italy. So a lot of things, and I love Carnatic music a lot because I am very much follower of them and very much I listen to them and I love, and I'm just but not yet, I haven't yet got any opportunity to collaborate with them, but I'm looking forward. I want to collaborate with violin and veena, so this is in my mind always. So I have friends, some of them are pursuing this thing, Carnatic music and this thing. But normally whenever I visit, every year I visit to Europe and I have some collaborative work with them. So, and really I like it because you know that it broadens the mindset, thought process. You can learn so many things from it. So it is so nice because in Western classical music also another part, something that we must learn that. Now I repent really, when I was in Europe for 9 years, why I have not learned piano. Now I repent that, oh no, I could have learned that. But maybe in future I will learn piano also. Yeah.
That's so wonderful to hear from you, Sahana ji. It's really true that we sometimes are lost so much into our own styles and our own reels that we forget to explore other things. But yes, doing one thing in one lifetime is also not enough. So moving on to the last part of today's discussion, I would like to bring in Kamal. again, and would like to ask him about 75 years. How do you think the world has also become a more global, uh, a global village over these years? And how do you think Indian music has impacted? How will it impact the future? And is there anything that we could adopt from the rest of the world to preserve or to propagate this form?
I think living in the US for a lot of kids, older than me and younger than me, people who were born and brought up in the US, um, the fact that I went to India to learn from Kanyamma, and it was the biggest blessing. And I think anybody should, if they're very serious about music, should go to India properly and learn. That being said, we have also wonderful gurus in the US, and I think the fact that we're able to, someone can be born in the US, might not have the means to go to India, can actually go and learn properly and come to a very good level in the US. I think that's a huge deal, and I think that's a huge win for Indian classical music. And this is not just the US, worldwide. For those who are not able to maybe come to India, they have a musical community, everywhere. I mean, you're saying you're in Switzerland and in Singapore and Australia, you name it. There's almost every other country. There is a sizable population where some sort of Indian Carnatic music, or Carnatic or Hindustani, some sort of Indian classical form is there. And I think that's a huge, huge win for us, all of us. And that being said, of course, if you have the means to go to India, that's always, that in person is incredible. One other thing, being from the US, I think the fact that Carnatic music and in Hindustani music is so prevalent gives kids who might not get to go to India very often a sense of Indianness, for lack of a better word. Something that ties them back to their culture. I know lots of kids who come, and through songs they know about our, like, Ramayana and Mahabharata and all of those things. Through the songs that they learn, they're actually able to learn, and have some sort of a cultural understanding. And the fact that we have concerts is like a sabha experience. They can go with their peers, they can go to the concerts, they can learn. Most concerts happen in a temple, so then they're also visiting the temple. And so because we have all of this, there's some Indian culture that's being spread. And I think that's the biggest benefit of having classical music, Indian classical music, worldwide. And what happened in these 75 years is, when so many people have migrated, my parents have migrated, my dad migrated here. And he would tell me back then, when he came here, it was only Carnatic violinists. There was nobody in the East Coast. He was the only one playing. And actually, his brother-in-law came here much before. And apparently, to get idli, they had to go from here to New York. They had to drive 5-6 hours just to get idli. So from there, we're at the place where we have Carnatic music at our houses. With a click of a button, you can hear great masters. And I honestly think that's so amazing. And hopefully the future, what we have for us, is this consistent globalization happening. And maybe we can come to a place where not only Indians, but people of all genres are being introduced to this wonderful art form. And I think we're not far from it. So that very brief, but that's all I have to say.
Yeah, thank you, Kamal. Sahana ji, please, your concluding remarks briefly on how Indian music would impact future, and what are the benefits that the future generations can draw from pursuing this art.
Actually, it is very positive. It will be very positive if school and colleges in India, they can make Indian classical music mandatory. It shouldn't be exam oriented, but it will be mandatory, because we don't know, some students, they must be very good musicians in future. So maybe we find that everyone under pressure of academics, okay, but maybe few of them at the same time they can pursue, they have that talent that we can at least discover. And in school, due to the academics pressure, so many students at 8th standard, they leave their musical practice. So because they think that 9th, 10th will be very much serious, and then 11th will be more serious to get to join engineering or medical. So it is a big pressure. But if we make it mandatory for school and colleges, so if they have taste, they can pursue it as passion. There is no pressure of examination, but they will at least learn this culture because it is treasure of India. So this is our responsibility to keep it, to preserve it, restore it. So that's why my suggestion is, I always tell that in many interviews I have requested and I have told that we should request our Indian government to make Indian classical music classes, Carnatic and Hindustani both, mandatory for school and colleges. So at least they will know about our culture. One thing that when I go to abroad, even airport porters, they can recognize this is sitar. When I carry my sitar box at the airport, taxi drivers, they can recognize. But in India, they don't. What is this actually? What is this? Kya hai ye? So it is very shameful when we don't recognize our instruments. They don't know about sitar, sarod, mridangam, pakhwaz, tabla, but they know drum, they know guitar. Very good. But why not we are encouraging our children to learn more about Indian culture? Because nowadays it is a trend that Western culture is much more encouraged in India, but in India, Indian culture is not more encouraged. They don't give any encouragement to it for in terms of learning. And so that will be my request, my suggestion. And because Indian classical music is such a nice thing, it works on body, mind, and soul, and it gives a tremendous impact, positivity, good vibration. It gives concentration, the power of concentration, it increases. So this is something different. So we must restore our culture in this way. That is my suggestions.
Thank you, Sahana ji. Thank you for your inputs. I'd like to hear from Nishanth at the end about the impact, the same question. Also, if you could add to how about formal education in Indian music, because traditionally we are doing it and we always say that artists are cultivated from the traditional way of doing it. But can we add in formal education and can we create just a sense of appreciation for this music with that? Will it help? Your views?
Yeah, I think wonderful question, Dharitree ji. So my thought is that first of all, both Hindustani music and Carnatic music, they predate 75 years by several hundred years. Right? They are from several hundred years. India, after independence, is really tiny, young compared to both the forms of music. And it's both these forms of music are such beautiful forms that have survived across all these years, predominantly through an oral tradition. We have managed to keep all of that just going, and it's really something that we must step back and appreciate and see how we have done that as well. I mean, we would, as musicians, I think we would love to see more people take it up and so on. But at the same time, I think we should also thank all our previous generations, all the musicians, for preserving this art form so beautifully for us, even without writing down all the music. And so maybe there is a lesson over there also. How did they manage to do that for all these years? I understand that today we are in a more crowded space. Perhaps 100 years ago, there was less things cluttering our mind, and therefore maybe it was easier to keep traditional art forms moving ahead. I think one thing that you beautifully brought up, I think music appreciation. I think even if we don't have everybody learn formally Carnatic music or Hindustani music, that may not happen. And I know many people who maybe they went for classes but said, oh, I really did not like going for classes. But 20 years later, they're very happy that they went for classes, right? Because now they can appreciate Indian music. So that means somehow if we can bring about just the appreciation of music, right? And this can happen even through simple songs for even children and at the school, right, which are more classical based, right? So if you think about it, there are beautiful songs even in Carnatic music, small songs like Dikshidhar has composed these Notuswarangal, and then there are these very small Geetams and so on, very small compositions. They are not very complex. They are not the most complex Carnatic music arrangement out there, but they are very pleasing to the ear. And I feel that if we just created an environment where even kids, everyone listen to these kinds of things along with whatever they're doing right now at a young age. And I think that is very much possible. Immediately, I think they will have a year for appreciating Indian music. And I think once they learn how to appreciate Indian music, there will definitely be a large fraction who will take this art form forward, and we won't have to worry about it. Because I see, I mean, when you come to the Chennai Music Festival and the Margari Festival, there are so many people, and so many people like even like Kamalakiran all the way from the US. I mean, it's amazing to see so many people sticking to the art form and really being torchbearers of this. And so I think we can draw on the energy of such people and just make sure that I think, yeah, this art form will live very, very, very well.
Thank you, Nishanth. Thank you so much. I think now we are really short of time. Just the quick takeaways that I found from this illuminating session. First is there is no other substitute to the traditional way of doing this music. So we have to ensure that we keep it up, but we shouldn't close our eyes to other ways of exploring it and try to take it to as many people as possible. Second thing is, this music doesn't require any crutches to stand. It's standalone, can stand on its own feet, and the audience receives it with a very open heart all across the globe, and that's a fact. And we have seen this by the works of many great musicians in the past who have traveled the globe to propagate this music. We see their work to fruition today. And the third is that we have to cultivate some way of letting people appreciate this music, trying to bring it to them in on more occasions, and trying to give them a glimpse of how it is done, how the artists learn or how they do. I think ShrotaHouse is one platform which is really actively doing that. I congratulate them for taking this initiative. And on this note, yes, it's true that India, after independence, is a young nation, but India as a civilization is not young. It has offered so much to the world, and classical music, our raga music, is one such amrit that India has offered, and there cannot be another occasion to cherish this and to cherish the contribution of our gurus, the previous generation musicians who have kept this tradition going against all odds. And I think it is our responsibility as students, performers, listeners to preserve it and take it forward with full force. With that, I wish everyone a very happy Independence Day. And I thank all the panelists for such an illuminating discussion. Thank you, Nishanth. Thank you, Kamal. Thank you, Sahana ji, for your time and your inputs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madhumita ji.
Thank you so much.
For
Thank you.
hosting this.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks.